Hello, and welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, along with my co host, Kathryn Peterson. And today we're going to continue an idea that we had on a previous episode where Kathryn turned the tables and decided I would be her guest. She would interview me, and we would have an opportunity to talk about some things that maybe I would typically try to get our guests to talk about. And that was a lot of fun, and we had a great time doing it. And I decided, well, hey, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So we're going to turn this one around and today make my favorite co host now a guest on the Building Bigger Lives podcast. So welcome to the Building Bigger Lives podcast, Kathryn Peterson.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always fun. And although I don't like being in the hot seat, I am excited to hear your questions because those are always good.
Well, we'll do our best. Hopefully, we won't meander too far off into the woods or the weeds. But I think what certainly our audience knows, and let's do the setup. They know that you are a production leader. They know that you work out of a small resort town in Colorado called Steamboat Springs. Maybe some folks have been there to ski, or maybe they've come in the summertime to hike or to play in the outdoors. It's beautiful there. So they make some assumptions about, okay, I think I know who Kathryn is based on what I see today. What they may not know is some of the context of why you're there. They may not also know how you got there. They may not know some of what interested you in the first place that led you first into banking before you found this crazy little niche called mortgage lending. And so I just want to spend some time setting up some of the context for those things. And then I want to, of course, do what all coaches do. I want to dig into the story behind the story. I want to understand what makes you such a passionate leader, but also what makes you such a caring and thoughtful partner in your business. And I also want to certainly find out how you've woven that together to be a great wife and mom while you're winning all these great awards. It's a pretty remarkable thing to get to see. And so I hope our audience will enjoy following along. So when you're ready, I'm ready to dive in.
All right. Seatbelt on. Let's
All
go.
right. So I think let's talk geography before we talk anything deep. You're in Colorado. Help people understand a little bit about the marketplace that you currently live in. You know, folks that might not know much more about Steamboat other than the ski resort. Tell them a little bit about Steamboat Springs, Colorado.
Yeah, it's a mountain town almost to Wyoming, very north central Colorado in the mountains. And it's a ski town, but also a cowboy town and a ranching town. And it's an amazing place that we kind of found by accident. And it's maybe between 12 and 25,000 in the county. And we swell up to maybe 50,000 in our busy weekends in the summer, and it attracts a lot of tourists. So we have that going on. But it's also just a great place because people take care of each other, people know each other. You see people that you know everywhere you go, and it's a fun place to be.
So when people think of small towns, and I know you mentioned the county, but the town of Steamboat Springs, what, 6, 7,000 people?
It's probably closer to 10,
Fair
10,
enough.
12, maybe.
So
Yeah.
so in that, most people would have this thought. I think if you're scattered somewhere around the great United States, everybody knows a small town of 10 or 12,000 people. But Steamboat Springs is a unique one in that you're when we think of moving to a small town, that sometimes can be, hey, we want to slow the pace of life down. We want to get
Mhm.
back to the simpler things. We want and Steamboat is an interesting mix of, yes, it is slow and simple, but it's also very high end. It's also very interesting in the mix. What attracted you and Todd to plant some roots in a community that is both small town but still kind of fancy by standards that vacationers might choose?
So Todd, my husband, was offered a job here, and I had never been here. So I can't say I necessarily picked it. I more picked Todd. But what has kept
Good
us here
choice.
is probably the better question to answer. And here, what's great is we were able to find a career that worked in a small town, and we were able to do it among really brilliant people. So there's a great community, whether it be retired people or whether it be high end business people, especially since COVID, who are just brilliant in what they do, but have made the choice to be in Steamboat. And because people say, hey, if I could live anywhere, where would I live? And that may be Steamboat for some people. So we've been able to have access still to a, thriving financial, business here and the real estate market, which is very active here. So we were kind of lucky that everything coincided to make it really work in a town that yes was slow, but my husband and I have always worked really hard.
Well, I'm sure the way you just described that, that means the kind of clients you get to work with are looking at properties that probably range everywhere from a turnkey condo to a ranch. I mean, I'm sure, and everything in
Mhm.
between. Tell
Mhm.
me about the diversity of the housing market within the county that you serve. What kind of clients do you get the privilege of working with?
So mostly I work with primary residence purchases just because that's where my heart is helping people stay in this county. But we do also work with second homeowners who might be from all over the world, really, and may own a company or be a CFO for a company or, deal with venture capital, all sorts of different things. So we get to meet a wide variety of people, and sometimes they're moving here, and that's pretty fun too. So we have this really wide variety. So we have someone who might be buying their first home at 300,000 and we might have someone who's buying a $5 million home but still wants to finance $1 million of it. So we get that diversity which really makes my job fun and exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be true because knowing how interested you are in so many different kinds of people, what a
Mhm.
great blessing it is to get to work with those folks right there
Mhm.
in your small community. But let's flip that around. I also know that outside of your community, you love to travel. You've been to, all corners of the earth in your travels. Where did you think that passion for travel came
Mhm.
from? Were you interested as a little girl in traveling, or did someone along the way introduce you to the idea that there are a lot of interesting people and places in this world to go visit?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure where it came from. I think it's a little bit of my curiosity and then just exploring new things. So, some of my favorite travel experiences have been things I wasn't expecting, or when you kind of end up in a situation and you have to figure out how to navigate the situation if, you don't know the language or you don't know the people or you don't know where you are or things like that can really make it feel real. I did an exchange in high school to Finland, and her and I are still friends to this day. I love her dearly. And I think that probably is one of the places that started because when you're in a situation when you don't speak the language, it might be hours before somebody, might translate something, but you're really getting immersed in the culture. It made me see how many of those out there in the world and how much left there was to explore.
That's really great. And I know you and Todd have carried that forward. I mean, you've taken your girls to travel interesting places. Where are some of the places in the world that you've had some really fond memories as a family? Where have
Mhm.
you enjoyed visiting?
So what comes to mind, probably the fastest is, we had a trip to Belize where it was just pouring rain, and everything you do is in a golf cart on this little island, and we were soaking wet, all of our suitcases were just covered in mud, we were covered in mud, and we giggled the whole time, and that kind of stuff really bonds us together, but we also had a great trip last summer to Europe, and went to a few different cities and just it was so cool to hear what everybody liked best about where we went.
If my memory serves me correctly, you went all the way to Rome to get to bump into one of our favorite people,
Mhm.
Patrick Palmer. How did that crazy meeting come about? You ran into the guy that you work with in Rome.
Yeah, we had heard that we were both gonna be there and thought for one day. So, it was he was leaving, I was coming, or opposite, I can't remember, but it was like, "Wait, you're gonna be in Rome that day too?" And so we planned a dinner and met up and had an amazing meal at this Italian place that was kind of in a little bit of a basement, and it was so good.
So good, so good. So, connect those for me then. As you look forward, is travel an important part of your future? Like when you look into the future, as you and Todd are now launching your girls into young adulthood, do you see a future where that might happen a bit more, or do you feel like, gosh, we're just going to double down in our nest here in Northwest Colorado? What draws you into the future when it comes to where you'll spend your time?
Yeah, travel is definitely a part of it. In fact, I last week, I don't think I've told you this yet, I started a bucket list of the places I wanted to go and asked Todd, and he was like, "The list is too long." And I'm still gonna write it down. But so yes, it will definitely be a piece of it. And we potentially will have the option of, let's say, renting our house out for a month or doing a house swap, something like that, so we can really get immersed. And I think that's the part that I want is I don't want to just visit a place for 3 days. I want to go there, do the
Mhm.
shopping, figure out the people and the culture a little bit more. It's not just about checking the boxes, it's about really diving in deep.
That really reconciles for me because that's the person I've known you to be in other contexts. So not surprised at all that that's how you would approach travel. Many times we've had the pleasure of being at a conference together, and regardless of the setting, and really regardless of the audience, you're always looking for a way to connect with people on a deeper, more personal level. It's fine to greet people in the hallway. It's fine to see someone up on the stage, but you really do a great job of saying, "Hey,
Mhm.
let's go grab a cup of coffee." Or, "Hey, what are you doing for lunch today? Hey,
Right.
do you have any dinner plans?" And as I've seen you do that, you've developed some really great friendships in the
Mhm.
professional context that we've chosen to operate in. Is that is that how you always were? Like, if we met you back in high school, were you that girl who was always just trying to connect with people and get together, or has that changed as you've become a professional?
I think it's changed over time. I was pretty quiet. I did have good relationships in high school, but I would say that as I got older, I was always kind of one of those kids who preferred to talk to adults over kids, and I've one like that now. And so I think to me, once I got older and realized, "Hey, adults have a lot of cool stuff they've done. I need to find out." Then it changes my perspective on people and that they all have a story to tell, and that's been really fun to explore. And I think as I've gotten into my career through college, and I have this great job where I get to ask people kind of any question I want a little bit. So and I'm already asking them what's their social and what's their, all this stuff. So it's like, "Hey, how did you get into this job?" Or what do you like best about what you do?" Or I can really ask some questions because I've gotten that open door, and it does really help me get to know the person a little bit differently.
Okay, you threw out a word that I want to jump on and dig into. You mentioned back in college. Now, I'm not here to bring up any conversations around Fifth Down back in 1990, but I'd love to know what drew you to the University of Colorado. What did you study, and what were you interested in when you were, 18, 19 years old?
Yeah, so CU I honestly was thinking I was gonna get further away, but we had some family stuff that happened right when I was heading to college, and so it was more the option of, "Hey,
Mm.
this is where I can go right now," and that worked. It was a great school, the business school at CU, and for me, I always wanted to be in business. There was I just imagined myself on like a subway with a briefcase and the whole thing. That was like what was in my brain about what I was gonna do when I grew up. So it's pretty funny. I ended up in a little town with some public transportation, but definitely not a subway. So it I just knew that I wanted to be in business. I liked how it worked. I liked how everything clicked. And then to pick finance, I was always really good at numbers and took higher level math classes in high school and thought, you know what, there's something that really makes sense. Like you said when I interviewed you, of, the math makes sense and it's always the same. And that was really refreshing to me. And therefore finance was kind of an obvious choice once I dove into school a little bit more.
Okay, so finance is a big old umbrella. We know in college
Mhm.
we get to take lots of classes that allow us to explore not just different math, as you suggested, but maybe different application for that. Did you ever imagine banking was the track, or were there other things that you were exploring at that time and found out, maybe that's not my track? Where did your classes take you at that time?
I learned a lot of different things. I took a bunch of marketing classes as well, which I enjoyed, but I think for me it was a little bit about, hey, where can I find a job? The job market wasn't as, awesome as other points in history, but also what can I find that will be interesting to me and I can continue to learn. So I remember taking or doing an interview once and I said, okay, tell me about the track for people who get hired. And they said, well, no matter what, you have to do this specific role for 3 years. And I was like, okay, what if I'm the best at that role that you've ever had in the company? And he's like, nope, 3 years. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want that job. So it was, I want to make sure that I can learn and grow and expand in my career. And so I think that's what kind of attracted me to banking down the road is all the different people that you meet.
Got it. Got it. Well, you're clearly on that track today. But there's a space between what interested you then and where you sit today, running your own mortgage practice. Where was the on ramp to get into mortgage lending? Were you interested in that niche and explored it, or did someone just say, "Hey, I think you'd be good at this. Give this a try"? Where did you get started?
Yeah, so I was a lender for a small community bank here, and the bank president, I was harassing him basically, and every day I was saying, "John, we have all these mortgage clients that we're referring out, and we need to capture this business. We need to keep these clients. We need a mortgage department." And it was like once a week, right, that I would talk to him. And he eventually said, "Okay, I agree. We need a mortgage department. Get it open in a couple weeks." And I didn't know what to do. I was a commercial lender and had run a portfolio of commercial loans. So it was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And so that's what I did. I set up broker relationships, interviewed lenders, got the department set up, and started it. And I think that gave me a different perspective on mortgage lending because I was a banker. So I've talked about this, but I'm an 8 to 5 kind of gal, and maybe it's 5:30, but I'm here every day at those times because I still think that that's a good way to work my business. And so there are some things that I've learned from that have really, really helped me out. And I'm pretty lucky, I think, of the on-ramp I did have. I also, because I had to just invent it from scratch, I didn't have the concepts of what was right and wrong in the industry. I just was like, well, this kind of makes sense. And then later was able to learn from people who had been doing it for a while and then modify the parts that weren't working.
Yeah, so this is now really interesting to me because as I think about that background, I now understand a little bit about your entrepreneurial spirit. Even though you
Mhm.
didn't launch your own business in the maybe the technical of sense, you really had to create something out of nothing, which meant
Mhm.
you had to be resourceful, which meant you had to be curious, which meant you had to take risk, which meant you had to build out a model and all these things that small business owners do. So you were practicing all of that as a young
Mhm.
professional. And what did that do to buoy your confidence as you were, climbing this, you know, early stage of your career ladder? What hopes did that give you to look toward a future that might look like today? Were you aiming for something or just figuring it out as you went?
That's a great question. I think that other people believed in me so much that it helped me believe in myself. And I think if someone would have said, "Can you do this?" I might have been like, maybe." But someone just said, "This is what you're gonna do." And the phrasing of that, and I believed in the cause. I was like, "We do need this as a bank." So I think between those things, I figured that I would probably figure it out, which I did, but, maybe not without some mistakes along the way, but that's okay. So I think that was part of it, but then, of course, once you do that, you feel like, "Hey, I've been able to figure this out once, I can probably figure this out again, and I can probably, redo my business in a different way because I've already done that before." And that does give you the confidence because it's a muscle that you've used before.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I love that you've got your version of that story because I think it helps you on both ends. I mean, it helps you as a leader because you do now have that confidence to show others, hey, follow me. We'll figure this out. We can do this. That's a great thing. But I think it also helps you in the actual role that you perform as a lender, because so many times as a lender, we're working through a bit of a puzzle and we have to
Mhm.
solve the puzzle. And every puzzle's unique because just like every jigsaw puzzle we've ever done, the pieces look similar, but they're unique. And you can't just jam a piece into a puzzle because it looks similar. You've really got to work hard to find where it fits. And I think that's what you spend a lot of your days doing as a lender today, is you spend a lot of your time as a puzzle maker. And so I think maybe you're drawing from a lot of that confidence that you had on both ends, leading your team and giving your clients the confidence that you have, that Kathryn
Mhm.
will help you figure this out.
Yeah, I think that just it's partially learning from the mistakes I've made over the years and having a great team of supporters and also just trying new things and seeing if they work or not.
Well, I think that that level of curiosity leads some folks to really explore things they didn't even anticipate knowing about. So now I want to
Mhm.
flip it forward. Is there anything that podcasting might be one of these where you've had an
Mhm.
opportunity to learn about something that wasn't part of the manual for a mortgage lender even 5 years ago? No one in pre-COVID, I didn't know any lenders who said, hey, you've really got to develop a podcast. Maybe at best it was, you've got to develop a social media strategy, and it might be a
Mhm.
good idea to put yourself on video from time to time. But you really embraced a path that I think now is becoming a bit more normalized. Where does this go for you when you're looking into the next 3 to 5 years? What are some of the things that you're now interested in that you might not have known about 5 years ago, but you're hoping to learn more about in the future, or you're hoping to spend more time doing as a professional? What do you see?
Hmm. That's another good question. I would say for me that like doing the podcast was also a little bit of I'm starting to realize how long I've been in this business and how much I've learned over the years and how much I've learned being coached. And so passing that on to other people I think is important to me. And then also learning something new. It doesn't matter how long we've been in this business. It's great to adjust, and it's also helped me out a little bit mentally because we can get stuck a little bit of the market goes down and you're like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing wrong?" And so it's been nice to feel like, "Oh, I have this project that I can explore and keep my mind entertained even when I'm not as busy at the office
Mm.
as I would be in a normal year." So that's been pretty fun, and I realize how much I like it and how much it's interesting to dig into people and learn about people and also just learn about topics that I honestly have learned a ton here. So it's that part's been good. I think going forward for me, it's gonna be about the people, number 1. I'm teaching some classes for United Way, and I've really enjoyed doing that. I wanna continue those things.
Mm.
I want to continue to just refine the business and kinda see what that looks like over the next few years. I feel like it's not the time for me to leave yet, but at some point, that might just my daily role might look different, and I'll be curious how that forms out over the next few years, and we'll see. I'm not done.
Yeah, well, you're not alone. I think a lot of clients that I get to talk to would express some version of what you just did. And what excites me as your coach, and for the others that I get to coach, is I want to help them figure out what that legacy looks like, because
Mhm.
for most of them, it's not, hey, I'm ready to get out. It's more of, I want to figure out what the next version of this looks like, knowing that if I'm going to pass a legacy along, I want to be really thoughtful about how I do that, whether it's with my team or with my partners or with my customers. I really want to be thoughtful about that so that I don't find myself hanging on, or find myself, losing credibility as I get older. They want their best years to be ahead of them, and so
Mhm.
I'm excited to join you on that journey. All right, one question that will segue from that, but I'm going to take it back to the personal side. You've got two young ladies in your home. and they are both unique people for sure and
Mhm.
doing unique things, but you get to be both of their moms. What are some of the things you are learning as a mom today, and what are
Mhm.
some of the things that you're hopeful for with your two
Mhm.
young ladies?
So I think a lot of what I've learned lately is a little bit of letting go. And maybe it's more like trusting, where you're like, okay, they're almost 16 and 19. So it's they've learned what they can learn from us mostly. And now I need to trust the decisions that they make. And that's been something that I have to kinda tell myself of like, they're gonna be fine, they're gonna be fine. They'll deal with the decisions that they make, and they'll be able to get through it. And it's been fun to watch because you kind of let them launch a little bit and kind of watch them fly. And it's also been hard because you're used to like telling them, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then you just have to just honestly, you kinda have to shut up a little bit, right? So and,
It gets harder as they get older.
I know, I'm sure, oh gosh. So I think that
The
that's
shutting up part, I mean.
yeah, yeah, totally. But it's been good, and they're pretty honest with me most of the time, I think. Like, I was telling them, "Can you kinda tell me if I get, like, weird and crazy when I'm older?" And they're like, "No, you would like, you'll just be that way, and that'll" and I'm like, "No, you'll need to, like, call me out on stuff." And, and so it's funny still to kinda have those conversations and be I try to stay as involved as I can. I signed up for Be Real because I wanted to see my daughter's face every day in college, and I'm like, "I'm gonna keep trying to be involved without being annoying."
There's a good mission right there. Be involved without being annoying. Lori's reading a book right now called "Keep Your Mouth Shut and Keep the Welcome Mat Out." And
Mm,
so this is,
yep.
how to parent your adult children. And look, lots of these things are well intended and they get you thinking.
Mhm,
Ultimately, you're going to land on a combination of your own convictions and then how you and Todd decide collaboratively to lean on each other's strengths, because there are probably some things you do
mhm,
that he depends on, probably some things he does that you
mhm.
depend on, and ultimately that's a healthy home in which those girls get to live in. It's not perfect. That's just the
Yeah.
way the function of a healthy home works, and I'm happy for that. Um, One last question on that topic. So look out into that future and let's pick one like 10 years down the road. So now we're in 2034. Those girls aren't 16 and 19, they're 26 and they're
Mhm,
29.
mhm.
And like your old coach here, maybe some of this gray hair starts to show up and you start to say, okay, what does my life look like in a season like that? Do you have a glimpse of it?
That's such a coaching question. Okay. So if you have a coach, this is what they're gonna ask you, just so you know. So I think for me and Todd, I think we wanna visit them enough that our we get to fill their bucket and they fill our bucket is what I'll say. But that we have enough of a life on our own that we aren't depending on them for our social life and we are having fun outside of that. Great if grandkids are involved, I'm all in and I'll help however I can. But at the same time, I want them to be independent and thriving and contributing to the world. And then I want to be doing fun stuff as well with Todd and, doing stuff that really gets us out of bed every day and is exciting. I'm again not going to be the person sitting in front of the TV all day, hopefully, and being able to be out and exploring in the world.
Look, as the co-host of a podcast called Building Bigger Lives, I'm really happy to hear that answer, because I think that's what our audience is also asking. They're asking, is there a version of my life that continues to be better because I'm building something bigger? When we
Mm,
play small, when we start to build fences around our life and we start to just play safe and we protect everything, there's an immediate gratification from that, and then a lot of long-term consequences. As we, the old saying goes, you're either growing or you're dying. And so I love hearing that your answer was a combination of spending time with them, but also recognizing that Todd and I need to build our own life. We need
Mhm.
to have things
Mhm.
that we enjoy doing, things that, as you said, get us out of the bed and out doing fun things in the world. And I think that's my hope our audience is picking up on is just because you've had this, really interesting career, this really great life, doesn't mean that you're going to plateau. It just means we just find new adventures. We find new things, and I love that that's where your head is, and that's why I asked that very typical coaching question is I try to get everybody oriented. It's amazing. A phrase hit me when I was probably still a client of Building Champions. People used to say, a vision without a plan is just a dream. And I would think and say, okay, I get that. Like you're just talking about something, but there's no plan to get there.
Mm.
That's a dream. But I find in life the opposite to be more common, which is a plan without a vision is more like a nightmare. I watch people all the time making all these plans, but it's
Mm.
not toward anything that really is meaningful. It's just this
Mhm.
hopeful idea, I guess, of if we just do good things, then better things will come. And my hope is no, let's orient toward a vision of what is that better thing, because you're much less likely to meander into really difficult things when you have that vision. So that's why I asked that question. Is I want our audience to hear that you're not just aiming to plateau. There are still other things that you and Todd will learn and do, and your girls will benefit from that, whether you get to be a grandparent or there's some other version of the future.
Yep, absolutely.
Any
Absolutely.
closing thoughts? In fact, this would be a fun one, Kathryn. Instead of just giving
Mm.
you an open platform, let's pretend in that window, sometime in the next 10 years, let's pretend your girls go back to the old YouTube and say, here's an old podcast where
Mm.
Michael interviewed our mom. What message would you tell
Mm.
today to Abby or Kayla 10 years into the future?
Oh, now you're making me tear up. Okay, so and I was like, I'm not gonna cry. I would say that that's a good question. I would say that I more than anything for them, and I think at least this is for me, I want them to be happy, healthy, doing something that they love every day. Because if they hate what they're doing, it's gonna be a slow slog, and it's okay to try new things, and it's okay to try different things. If you're like, "I have to bail on that career," that's okay. And I think the big thing for me is that they find happiness in what they're doing and that they're influencing other people in the best way, in a way that's meaningful to them, and I think that that's the most important thing.
Let's put a button on it right there. And I hope the girls do get to see this someday.
Yeah.
And Kathryn, I'm so thankful that you and I get to do this as a
Mhm.
labor of love. We both get to enjoy interviewing people, and it was my pleasure today to get to interview you. Thanks for being my guest.
Thank you so much, and thanks for asking great questions as always, and for being my amazing coach for many years. And I'm excited to continue to do this podcast and have my coaching time with you.
Well, let's put a wrap on it for today. Thank you for joining us on the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, along with Kathryn Peterson. We're here every Wednesday dropping an episode that we hope enriches your life, brings more value to the way that you lead, both at home and at work. And we hope that you'll share our episodes with others that you feel would benefit. You'll find us on Apple. You'll find us, of course, on YouTube, and follow us on our Instagram page, where Kathryn does a great job of keeping us up to date on everything going on with the podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.